Hola, ¿qué tal? Me da muchísimo gusto coincidir con ustedes el día de hoy. Yo soy Fabián Carvallo. Esta es su entrevista en el programa Atman, un programa de entrevistas que hacemos semanalmente y en la cual invitamos a las personas que están trabajando destacadamente o incluso comenzando a trabajar en este tema de medio ambiente. Y hoy tenemos un tema muy especial y una invitada también muy especial, y es el tema relacionado precisamente con la minería submarina. Pero antes, bueno, primero que nada, quiero saludar y agradecer al equipo de la Hora Ambiental, Juan Jorge, eh, Sandra, Marisol, y al canal, perdón, disculpen, y al canal 9 de la televisión comunitaria de Purépero en Michoacán, y a la hospitalidad de las siguientes radios que transmiten este programa: Chapingo, Xali, Nandía, Violeta, Chureya, Política y Rock and Roll, Contexto, Guacha y Echaíz. Y por supuesto, gracias a usted con el favor de su atención para este programa. Y como les decía, el tema de hoy es minería subterránea o submarina, más bien. Y para eso vamos a tener a una invitada especial. Nuestra invitada el día de hoy es Farah Obaidullah, quien es fundadora de Ocean and Us, una organización internacional que trabaja con esos temas, y que también ella es fundadora de Women for Oceans, la plataforma, y editora del libro The Ocean and Us, El Océano en Nosotros. Ella tiene una maestría en ciencias y también una licenciatura en ciencias del colegio de Imperial College en Londres. Después de 4 años de trabajar como consultora y trabajar estos temas y auditar hacer auditorías y evaluaciones para el sector privado, Farah le hizo un cambio a su carrera, y lo que cambió a los temas que le apasionan, que es el océano. Y durante 20 años se ha dedicado a proteger los océanos del mundo, lo cual le agradecemos muchísimo desde ahorita. Y ha viajado por el mundo observando la belleza de los océanos y atestiguando algunos de los más egregios prácticas que suceden en el mar. Y entre sus logros, Farah ha llevado a cabo campañas para abordar y terminar contra la pesquería destructiva, que ha afectado a comunidades, y también ha trabajado en cabildear para la protección del océano, y se ha involucrado en exponer los temas de crímenes que están relacionados con la pesquería, que, bueno, son bastantes. Y además de eso ha abordado los temas de esclavitud y eh, abusos laborales en el mar. Actualmente, Farah está trabajando con una moratoria para detener la minería submarina. Es una industria que ha trabajado muy fuerte para tratar de posicionarse, y lo cual va a ocasionar daños irreversibles a los ecosistemas del fondo marino, y por el cual bueno, no sabemos qué impactos van a ocasionar sobre precisamente pues el medio ambiente, y relacionado sobre todo con el ciclo de carbono. Y haya seguido la expedición de Ocean Hope, un proyecto que conecta a las personas con el océano y que celebra las profundidades del mar, y ha apoyado la moratoria para detener la minería submarina. Y bueno, pues les recuerdo también que esta entrevista va a estar en inglés. Esperamos tener los subtítulos también en español. Y pues, that's all. Farah, it's really a pleasure to me present to my audience. Thank you. Thank you very much for your hard work in the ocean. Thank you. You're welcome to this show.
Thank you, Fabian, for having me here today.
Well, first of all, Farah, please could you tell us a little bit related with why a healthy ocean is important and what the current threats are, please?
Sure. So we actually live on a planet that is mostly covered by the ocean. So over 70% of the planet is covered by seas and oceans. And it is the ocean that provides us with much of the oxygen that we breathe, that is found in the atmosphere today. It is a healthy ocean that provides us with food, that provides us with income, and that also helps regulate our climate. So the ocean is the world's largest carbon sink, and much of that carbon actually sits is locked away in the seabed, but also in the animals that swim in the ocean. So think about whales, think about fish. They are all little carbon vessels, if you like, capturing and holding on to carbon that is actually coming from our atmosphere. So the ocean absorbs 25% of the carbon that's in the atmosphere, and also absorbs 90% of excess heat from the atmosphere. And all of this is possible because the ocean has always been healthy, right? It's a healthy ocean that carries out these functions. But unfortunately, the ocean is under serious attack from a number of threats. And these threats include overfishing and destructive fishing. So according to the United Nations, up to 90% of all global fish stocks are either fully fished or overfished or simply depleted. And also 1 in 5 fish that you eat are caught illegally. So they're not caught according to any rules or regulations. And this seriously undermines, any effort to manage fish stocks around the world. But then we also have pollution, which I think many of your viewers might be familiar with or might know about, that there is so much pollution entering our oceans. Between 10 and 15 million tons of plastic, for example, enters our ocean each year. But then there's also other forms of pollution from, agricultural runoff, but also from shipping and from other industrial activities. And then there's the climate crisis, which we are all feeling the effects of. As I mentioned, the ocean is the largest carbon sink. But what's happening is that the ocean is warming as a result of climate change. It is acidifying, so the pH level is reducing, and also the ocean is losing its oxygen content. And all of this matters because it means that it's disrupting the ocean ecosystem. It's disrupting fish migration, for example. It's disrupting the growth of fish, but also other marine animals that depend on, calcium on a higher pH for their growth of their skeleton or of their shells. And so all of these impacts are already threatening the health of the ocean, and therefore the ocean's ability to carry out the functions that make our life possible. If you think about the climate and the extreme weather events we experience around the world today, much of that is driven by changes in the ocean. Because the ocean is warming, we're seeing more extreme weather events. For example, the hurricanes of the past few weeks in Florida. So the ocean plays such an integral role in life on Earth. And therefore, it is so important that we keep the ocean healthy, and where it has been diminished, we restore the health back to how it used to be.
Not a small thing, really. So,
not at all.
Yeah, it's a little bit worrisome, this thing. Starting with the next question that I have is related with, let's talk about deep sea mining, what is and what is dangerous. But before you answer this question, I was thinking in a science fiction movie called Captain Nova. In that, the main problem is someone wants to deep mining in the Arctic. And science fiction sometimes is an issue that prevent to us related with something. And historically, we have we have that histories that prevent to us. So it's very important. Please, could you tell us related with deep sea mining, please?
Sure. Well, so deep sea mining, it doesn't yet happen anywhere in the world today. And it is basically as the name suggests, mining of the deep ocean floor for minerals, for metals. There are 3 types of prospective mining, so 3 types of mining that are interesting for speculative mining companies. And the one that is most important, I think, for us today is the strip mining of the ocean floor for these polymetallic nodules. So they're these kind of coal-sized lumps that sit on the ocean floor of the abyssal plains. And these rocks are rich in metals, in cobalt, nickel, and manganese in particular. And the mining companies wish to rip these nodules off the seafloor and profit from the metals that are in them. So deep sea mining, as I said, it doesn't yet happen anywhere, but there is a push by a handful of companies to open up the high seas, the international waters, to deep sea mining in as little as a year or 2 years' time. There's a real threat that they want to start mining in 2025 already. And why is this important? Well, they want to, important to stop. They want to mine, first of all, as I mentioned, in the high seas. These are areas of the ocean that don't belong to any one country. So they are beyond the national jurisdiction of any one nation. This means that there is no effective governance in these areas. There's no mechanism for accountability and no mechanism for enforcement. Deep sea mining will, if it happens, will take place very deep in the ocean, between 4 and 6 kilometers deep. So, it's not somewhere that we can go and audit. No independent party can afford to go down to those depths and audit the activities of mining companies there. But also, mining by definition in the deep ocean is very different to mining on land. On land, even though we have so much to improve with land-based mining, and at the moment there's a lot of problems associated with land-based mining, in the deep ocean, those problems are accentuated. They are made worse because of the currents that will carry the dust plumes, the sediment plumes that result from bulldozing the ocean floor. This sediment plume is going to suffocate life many, many tens of square miles beyond the mining areas. Then there's noise pollution. Noise travels further in the ocean than on land. And the noise will impact, again, many tens of or hundreds of square kilometers beyond the mining area. And then there's also the issue of light pollution. The deep ocean does not see any light. We're talking 4 to 6 kilometers deep. There is no light that penetrates there. So life in the deep ocean has evolved without disturbance of light. And they will, through deep sea mining, they will introduce huge amounts of light to this ecosystem. Now, the deep sea is a very slow growing ecosystem. You have fish there that are many hundreds of years old. You have corals that are thousands of years old, and sponges even that reach 10,000 years old. So everything there is super slow growing and slow to reproduce. And so it is not, it is very vulnerable and does not respond well to disturbance. So if we start bringing huge machinery down there to start plowing the ocean floor, destroying ancient habitat, which will not return over human timescales, and introduce pressures such as noise and light pollution and sediment plumes that the deep ocean has never seen before, we are really destroying this newly discovered part of the planet. And I just also want to mention that the nodules that the miners seek, they have taken millions of years to form. So they are not a renewable resource. This means that if we take them away, they will not return. It'll, again, take millions of years for them to return. And we are learning almost, very regularly, but almost with every single expedition that we go, that happens and that goes down to the deep sea, we learn something new about these nodules. For example, they provide essential habitat to life in the deep sea. Just this summer, we discovered, or scientists discovered, that these nodules actually produce oxygen in the deep ocean. And this is an amazing discovery, because we always thought that oxygen was the product of photosynthesis by plants, whether on land or in the ocean. But this new discovery opens up a whole new world of science. And so we really can't afford to start destroying this part of the world that is and very vast and very vulnerable, and for which there's no governance structure equipped to deal with an industrial activity, because it's the high seas. No country is going to care about this area, even if they say on paper they do. If it doesn't concern your sovereignty, you're not going to spend political, clout or spend resources on ensuring that things are happening correctly in the deep sea. And there's just on a final point, I want to add that, as I mentioned, the ocean is the world's largest carbon sink. That carbon is locked away in the seabed. And if we start plowing the seafloor, we risk disturbing that locked away carbon. It'll re-enter the water column with consequences that we don't understand yet. Will it change the ocean chemistry in the deep sea? Will it affect, the biological pump, which is basically the carbon cycle in the ocean? All these questions remain unanswered, and so 32 countries are saying, no, let's not go there. Let's not start mining the deep sea. We simply don't have enough confidence that we can do this without destroying essential services and habitat.
Oh my God, doesn't look very well, this thing. And we need to explain to the whole world in order to change this thing, because I think humanity, especially humans, of course, we have a lot of power. We don't have money. We have a lot of power to do things, but some people aren't doing the best thing. So it's a big problem, this thing that you are explaining to us. So, well, not much to say. We need to work. But the next question that I have to you is, could you please briefly explain the high seas, the area where deep sea mining tends to happen, please?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, the ocean makes up most of our planet, right? Just over 70% of our world is ocean. And of that, actually, most of the ocean is the high seas, 64% to be precise. And this translates to almost half our planet that are considered international waters or high seas. This means that these areas are beyond the national jurisdiction of any one country. And it means that there is no, national stewardship for these areas. There is, just last year, the United Nations did adopt a new treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. It's a very technical name, but actually it means that they did adopt a treaty for the high seas. And this treaty is supposed to protect wildlife on the high seas. This treaty has been adopted, but it has not been ratified. So it has not entered into force yet. We need 60 countries to ratify this treaty before it takes effect. And I think the teller now is on 13 countries that have ratified the treaty. So we still have a long way to go before the treaty is ratified. And then the process of setting up a secretariat and all of these kind of United Nations processes can begin before this secretariat really, or before this high seas treaty can really take effect. So we're still a few years out of it being meaningful. But in the meantime, the body that's charged with mining the deep sea, or with regulating the mining of the deep sea, I should say, they are pushing forward with the finalization of a mining code, which will dictate how, what the regulations are for mining. And so these two kind of international processes are happening simultaneously. And it's really important that we make sure that the High Seas Treaty is ratified as quickly as possible so that it can actually be effective. And it's also really important that we, make sure that more countries speak out in favor of a moratorium on deep sea mining. So those are two global processes that are happening at the moment.
Okay, the next question related with this treaty. Mexico has signed this treaty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's a good news to
yes. And also Mexico is one of the 32 countries, in fact, that supports a moratorium on or a precautionary pause on deep sea mining. So this is great news. But as we all know, governments change, right? So it's not good enough that the government takes a position on deep sea mining. This is great for the short term, but we also need to really enshrine these positions in our own communities, in our own societies, so that even if government changes, we, the people, know what we want and what we don't want. And so the more people speak out against deep sea mining, the more difficult it will be for governments, even when they change, to flip their position and say, oh, yes, that was the position of the last cabinet, but now we say something different. So this is why it's very important that everybody speak out against deep sea mining.
Besides that, usually we sign everything, but we do not comply the most of those things. And I was thinking, well, you were talking about this. Sometimes it's very hard to society try to connect this, because sometimes it's like, okay, I'm here, the high seas is very far away from me, so it doesn't have any problem to me. But don't forget that everything is connected. So we are breathing oxygen from the deep sea sometimes, or some places very far away from us. So don't forget that. Don't forget it.
Yeah, and Fabian, if I might add as well, what's important for Mexico and your viewers and audience to know is that the area that the miners wish to start mining in is actually an area that sits between Mexico and Hawaii. So it's an area called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. And the impacts from deep sea mining will be felt far beyond the mining areas. So the area that the total area that is currently under license is 1.3 million square kilometers. That's a huge area, right? And as I mentioned, the noise and light pollution and the sediment plumes, all of this will be felt far beyond the mining sites and perhaps well into, the Mexican territorial waters. We know from studies that have tried to understand the noise impacts on whales, for example, that the impact will be felt, the entire area that will be impacted beyond a threshold that is acceptable for whales and dolphins is something like 10 times the area of France. That's a huge area. But we also know from studies that if mining were to go ahead, industrial fisheries will be impacted. So, for example, the tuna fisheries of the Western Central Pacific Ocean, or that area of the ocean, will be affected by deep sea mining. So this is why fishing communities and industrial fishing organizations are also calling for a moratorium on this industry. So it's really not just environmentalists and concerned citizens and increasingly governments that are saying no to deep sea mining. It's also business. It's also fishing industry. And we are also seeing that big companies like electric vehicle companies and technology companies like Google, Samsung, Philips, Volvo, BMW, Renault, Volkswagen, all these big, global corporations that are either tech or electric vehicle companies, they are also saying no to deep sea mining. They have pledged support for a moratorium on deep sea mining, but they've also pledged not to source minerals from the deep ocean for their supply chains. So this is very important, very hopeful, very good news, because it means that there is no social license to mine the deep sea, and there is no need to mine the deep sea because these companies are saying we don't need those metals from the deep sea.
Okay, well, it's very clear to me. I would like to those people understand very well, and I don't know why, Farah, but every day they are invented new ways to destroy our Earth. I don't know why, but anyway, we need to work in order to change this thing. And the next question that I have to you is, please, could you talk about what we're doing to prevent deep sea mining in what listeners or viewers can do, please?
Sure. So there's a global movement underway to stop deep sea mining, and this is fantastic news, and it also energizes me. I've worked on so many issues over the past 20 years to do with ocean health, and the fact that that we are uniting across industries, across countries, and across backgrounds on this one issue gives me hope. And there are many ways that your viewers and listeners can get involved. So first of all, what we're trying to do is really raise awareness about this issue along the west coast of the Americas. So the entire Pacific coast, really, because this is ground zero for deep sea mining. And so we need communities in this part of the world to speak out against deep sea mining. So we have a declaration on our website at theoceanandus.org, which we are encouraging businesses and community leaders and associations, fishing associations, universities, learning institutions, museums, cultural centers to sign, to endorse, so that we can take this declaration to the International Seabed Authority next year and show that there is no social license to mine the deep sea, and particularly not from the communities that will be first impacted by deep sea mining, which are those in the along the Pacific Rim. So that's something that businesses and associations and communities and entities, if you like, can do. But also as an individual, you can speak up as well. We have a petition on our website that everyone can sign, and we have over 344,000 people that have already signed it. So we really want to get to 500,000 before we go to the International Seabed Authority. And so these are very tangible things people can do. And we also would encourage you to share it with your network, share it with other business owners, with other association leaders, so that we can really demonstrate that there's no social license to mine the deep sea. And then, of course, as with everything, we need support in order to be able to carry out our work, to raise the awareness, to join forces, to bring everybody together on this issue, and to visit with the communities, and eventually to take the declaration to the International Seabed Authority. So we would encourage anybody that can, of your viewers, to to support our work, which you can also do at theoceanandus.org. And finally, if you want to get involved somehow, if you want to meet with us along the way or online, so that we can continue to raise awareness of this issue, then please get in touch, because the important thing is that we all mobilize and that we spread this message far and wide to artists, to sports figures, to musicians, so we can really amplify this campaign, not a campaign about, bad news, but a campaign about hope, because everything that we are all experiencing right now with the climate crisis, with the biodiversity loss, right, the loss of wildlife happening all around us, this is something we can still stop before it begins. And this is something that, the high seas belong to me, they belong to you, they belong to everyone. And so this should not be a political issue. We've seen it with Antarctica. The global community came together and set Antarctic, the South Pole, off limits to extractive activities. And we can do the same thing with the high seas. We can say, you know what, we cannot afford this experiment and destruction of the deep sea. Leave it alone. And for us now, but also for in the future.
Wow. Thank you. Really, thank you very much, Farah, for that. But before we say goodbye, there is something that we don't talk still that you want to address before we leave. We have like 1 minute or more or less.
So my take-home message to your viewers, your audience, is that don't despair. This is a campaign of hope. The Ocean Hope Expedition, it unites us, it connects us to the ocean, it celebrates the high seas, and it rallies support for a moratorium on deep sea mining. This is something we can do. I believe it, and I hope you do too.
Well, thank you very much, Farah. Farah Obaidullah, thank you very much to you and your whole team in the Ocean and Us. Also, thank you to Isabella De Fols for help in the background and all things. And thank you very much for our listeners and viewers that are always supporting to us. And well, thank you for everyone. We need more work to do, but we don't not to forget that we need to have a clean energy, and we also to have a frugal behavior in order to don't have this pollution everywhere. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabian. Bye.
Bye. Before Julie, please don't leave when we cut this interview, please. Thank you.
Sure.